Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the live stream for my YouTube channel. This is Nils Davis. I am the author of the Secret Product Manager Handbook and other things, and also have a blog of the same name and all that sort of stuff. As you know, every Monday night at 7:30 Pacific time, or nearly every Monday night, I'll skip a couple in April because I'll be out of the country, I do a live video about some product management topic. And sometimes I do it based on questions I get either through the week or from various people as I have visit chats on various Slack product management communities, or that I get from real people in real life, or that I think are interesting, right? It doesn't have to be from somebody. Anyway, I get these questions and I like to try to answer them, and they're all about product management and how to find good problems to solve with your product, how to create good products, and how to get those products out into market and sell them. And that's actually the big topic for today, which is really, let me just turn that off. The big topic for today is what are the handoff problems between product and go-to-market. And so, I didn't know what go-to-market meant for a long time. So I think the first thing that we really need to address here is the whole question of what does this jargon of go-to-market mean anyway? So maybe this will be helpful for some of you who are just getting into product management or maybe aren't quite sure. It took me actually a long time to learn this. Of course, I started a long time ago before there were people putting out videos like this. But so what really is go-to-market? Well, you think about the situation where you have a product in the market, right? No, you have found a problem. Sorry, let me start again. You think about this situation. You have found a problem and you have created a solution to that problem using your dev team, or maybe you haven't quite created a solution. I'll come back to that. But the go-to-market part of the whole process is finding other people in the market that have that problem, and having the tools for marketing to find those people and to get them into your funnel, and then giving the tools to having the sales team have the tools to qualify those people, and then to eventually close them if they're qualified prospects. So basically, go-to-market is about how do we find the people that have the problem our product solves? How do we then convince them to buy our product, right? And so there's a lot of different things that are happening here in the go-to-market process. One thing that's really important that I don't think people think about enough is part of an effective go-to-market is making sure that you don't bring people in who aren't qualified, who aren't likely to buy your product, right? So you're qualifying people out. It's as important as qualifying people in. And I can give you a quick example of this. I used to have, as you probably know if you've seen some of these videos in the past, I worked on a product that was for project managers. And so we had a project management tool. Now, if we weren't giving the sales team and the marketing team good information about how to do go-to-market, they would have reached out to everybody who does project management. And that's a lot of people that use Microsoft Project. Well, if our prospect was using Microsoft Project and reasonably happy with it, or Microsoft Project was appropriate for them, they were not a good candidate for our tool. Our tool is really for enterprises, smaller enterprises. But if we just said project management, we would have gotten a lot of people into our funnel that weren't appropriate for our funnel. So it was very important that we give the sales and marketing teams more information about that. And so that's really what this whole thing is about, is what kind of information do you need to give to your team in order for them to be able to do effective go-to-market. So, as I said, this is really about sales and marketing, but oftentimes it's thought of as just what sales and marketing do. But the fact is that's not really accurate. There's a lot of product management involvement, or there should be, if you want to do it effectively. Now, the other thing I mentioned, I sort of hinted at, you don't really have to have a solution in order to do go-to-market. And in fact, if you think about Kickstarter, which is an online marketplace, probably most of you are familiar, where people put up essentially pitches for products that they want to get funding to build. So in other words, in many cases, these products are not actually built. In some cases, they have a prototype or something like that. But in a lot of cases, the product is not built yet, and they're trying to get funding for that product to be built. In other words, they're selling it before they have a solution. And so you have to have a successful Kickstarter, you really have to have found a problem that resonates with people and be able to pitch that you're going to be able to solve it in a better or more powerful way than any of the other options that the prospects could be using. So the other thing I wanted to mention, I've done a number of videos and podcasts and things about this concept of the value inequality, which is about how your prospects think about the value that they're going to get from your product versus the amount of money they're going to spend on your product and the risk and the opportunity costs and the change management costs. And so a lot of this go-to-market stuff ties into that, because actually it turns out that a lot of what you're going to help your sales and marketing teams with in the go-to-market process is ameliorating their fears and risk, their perception of risk about your product and your solution. So let's move on. So there's really some big questions related to go-to-market. And these are what I think of as a litmus test. In fact, my last video was really about using this litmus test for your go-to-market process, as a test to see, is your go-to-market process working, right? Do we know how to reach the people with this problem? Meaning, do we know their characteristics? Do we know what to say to them in the marketing campaign, for example, that will make them, click on that button or sign up for our mailing list or whatever it might be to get them into our funnel? Now, once we have them in the funnel, do we know how to qualify them? Do we know how to make sure that they're people with the problem that we solve and that they don't already have a solution or that they're unhappy with their solution? Do we know how to do discovery with these people? Do we know how to ask about the particulars of their experience of this problem that we can then use later on when we start pitching our actual solution? So the pitching the actual solution is, do we have good ways of articulating why our solution is better than the other alternatives that the prospect might have? Now, this might be through how we differentiate. This might be how we respond to objections. It might be the stories that we can tell. And you can also remember that the alternatives might not be another product like us. It might be not buying anything at all and continuing to do whatever they were doing using a spreadsheet or something like that. So those are the types of things that we want to be thinking about in terms of, have we provided the marketing and sales organizations with the tools that they need to do good go-to-market. Now, the biggest problem that marketing and sales have in this process is that they don't hear from us. They get crickets from us. We throw our product over the wall, so to speak, us product managers, and we say, go to town, go find some people to buy this. Thank you very much. And this seems kind of funny, and I think that most of us, when we read and study product management, recognize that this is not a good way to manage the situation at all. But it is something that does happen out there in the world, where the product management team doesn't really give the sales and marketing team the information that they need to be successful. So that's really the biggest problem. And so what do we do to solve this problem? Well, in the ideal world, product management is going to provide a bunch of stuff to marketing that they can then use, and to sales that they can then use to do a really effective job of getting prospects in the door and selling them once they get them in the door. So we're going to be able to tell marketing in particular, who are the ideal segment? What's the characteristics of these people that have the problem that we solve? Right? What kind of businesses are they in? If it's a business type of product, what businesses, what segments, how big is the business? If it's a consumer product, what's their demographics? Is it soccer moms? Is it soccer player kids? Whatever, right? So if we can provide that information, that means we're much more likely to get our funnel filled with the people that have the problem and will actually be good customers for us, versus having a funnel filled with a lot of people that are just unqualified. So the other thing that we're going to give to marketing, and sales will use this as well, is a very friendly and understandable way of talking about the problem that our product solves, so that the prospects, when they see our marketing or when the salesperson starts to talk to them, the prospect says, oh, these people understand the problem that I'm facing, and they understand it well enough that I can trust them that they're going to give me a good solution, or that I am willing to continue to talk to them about getting a good solution. Now, of course, we want to give the sales team in particular great questions and information for doing discovery and qualification, right? Do these prospects really have the problem? Again, it's all about, do they really have the problem? What are the particulars of their problem, so we can then talk about that later on when we do when we do a demo for them or something like that. We want to provide them with the common objections, particularly the product-related objections, and how to handle those. An example might be, a prospect says, well, your competitor has feature X, you don't have feature X, and I think it's really important. How do we handle that question? How do we guide the sales team to answer that question? They're going to get it, most likely. We should know that as product managers. That should be something that we have learned about either our competitors or the types of things that maybe our competitors are pitching against us. And so we should know how to answer that question. And then we shouldn't depend on the salesperson, the individual salesperson, to figure out the right answer, because they likely don't know as much about this as we do. And so we can give them a huge leg up if we give them the answers. Now, it is a little bit of a two-way street. We do want to also make sure that we have a channel with the sales organization that we get to hear about the objections that they get, so that we can provide them with good answers. And also, it's always good to know what they are answering, because sometimes they do have good answers, right? Because professional salespeople know how to handle objections. That's part of their skills. But giving them specific product information to handle product-related objections, it's very much of a leg up that we can give them from the product management side. And again, typically we know the answers to those questions. Now, we also know oftentimes we know a lot of stories about our customers, and we can often use those to answer objections. So for example, in the question about feature X, it may be that the answer to that objection is, well, let me tell you a story about a customer who wanted feature X. They bought our product anyway, and now they're super happy and they're using this other feature instead. And when we asked them about that, they said, well, feature X turned out to not be that important. Maybe that's a story that you have, and you can share that with the sales team, and suddenly they have this big additional tool that they can use to close against a competitor. So finally, we also want to, of course, give a lot of information about the features and the benefits and the differentiators that are in our solution compared to the other alternatives, so that those are all things that the sales team can use. Now, the fact is that often we do give the list of features. Sometimes we give the list of benefits. Rarely we give the list of differentiators, and almost never give all the really great stories. Now, really good product teams do all those things, of course, and that's one of the things that helps products become really successful, is when the product management team provides all that information to the sales team so that they can do go-to-market effectively. But it's surprising how often it's not there. So I've talked already really to the contents of this slide, but the basic idea is that we want marketing to be able to find the people that have the problem that we solve. We want sales to be able to qualify those people, and we want qualified prospects to understand that we solve the problem that they have, and we need to do that we can do that in various ways through stories and objection handling. And we also make sure that sales has the right answers to the objections, not ones that they made up, which might not hold water or might commit us to doing things with the product that we don't want to do. So there's lots of reasons to manage that. So my friend Neal, who actually sort of helped me with this original question, had an interesting set of scenarios to think about in terms of how you get this information if you're a product organization. If you don't have very many customers, or there's actually a range of scenarios, you might have no customers yet for this particular solution. You might have a handful of customers, but they're not really all in the same kind of segment and things like that. How do you do that? How do you deal with that? And then you might have maybe a lot of customers in a particular segment who are all sort of aligned, and so you can use them as the basis for coming up with this. Now, what do you do in these situations? Well, obviously, when you're first thinking about building this solution, you went out to the market to find market problems. I mean, I hope that you didn't build a solution thinking that you understood a problem without going to market to validate it, right? So as part of that market discovery process, you should have learned a lot about the characteristics of your prospects, of the potential people who will need this solution, right? That's what your prospects are. Now, you may not have many of them as customers yet, but you should know something about them. And you won't know as much about them as once you've sold the product multiple times. But even to start with, if you enter a new product into the market, you should have a good sense of why you're doing that. And that's exactly one of the things that marketing needs. Why you're doing it is who has this problem, what are they like, why do we think there's enough of them for us to make a business out of it, right? So you should have a lot of that information just from your market discovery, even if you don't have any reference customers at that point. So what about objection handling? Well, you're going to probably know a lot about the competitors even before you have your product out in the market, because you're going to have, while you've done market discovery, you're going to have done some looking at what do the competitors offer, and what is the business as usual for these customers, what are they suffering from. So those are a lot of ways to handle objections. And then in terms of the stories that you have, you may not have many stories of successful customers yet, but you certainly should have stories about prospects and the pain that they're suffering with business as usual, or potentially with your competitors. And so those are the sorts of things you would start telling stories about immediately. Now, if you do have a few customers and you've started to learn some things, essentially you're going to be refining that. Now, you may not have stories that apply to every single segment of your prospects, right? In the second situation where you have fewer than 6 reference customers and they're kind of in different segments, there's not much commonality amongst them, but you are going to have some things that you can probably use in terms of how they are using your product that you can use in a general way. Oh, we're much more efficient in this process than we used to be. Maybe that's not exactly the process that your new prospect has, but if you can take that information to the sales and marketing organizations effectively, then you can probably help give them some good insights into how to handle those objections. So that's a thing you can think about. Now, if you have a lot of references, of course, you not only just have the information about the segments of your prospects and their problems, which you got in market discovery. You've probably refined that as you've been selling and you've learned things about that. You might have learned that there's other segments that are also interested, for example. But you also should be starting to get actual stories of how your customers have been successful with your solution. And that's what you're really aiming at when you start to get the higher numbers of references, is how are customers being successful with my solution? How are they using it in their own particular ways to solve their own particular problems? And in particular, you can start to learn things like, well, we didn't give them feature X, which everybody thought was really important, but they're using this other feature to substitute for that, or maybe they're using a third-party tool, or whatever it might be, right? In the project management world, again, just as an example, we had this enterprise project management tool that also did enterprise portfolio management, but it didn't do agile project management, didn't support scrums and iterations and things. It was just regular project management. But we had a lot of customers who did agile using our tool. How'd they do that? Well, they integrated with agile project management tools like Jira and Rally to do the deep level or the fine-grained project management, and they used our tool for managing the portfolio projects at a higher level, and they used an integration that we had, and so that was awesome. And so if anybody asked us, well, what do you do about Agile? We'd say, well, here's what our customers are doing about Agile. And we have many customers that are successful with Agile. We would just tell that story. And then we would also say, oh, by the way, most of those Agile tools, they do a crap job on portfolio management that we are super good at. So there's our differentiator, and that's how we told that story, right? The whole piece, all the pieces fit together. And when we told that story, we were very successful selling against competitors who touted their Agile, but didn't have much in the way of portfolio management, just as an example. But we wouldn't have been able to tell that story without having customers that were successful doing Agile using outside tools. So that's the way that you sort of ramp up those sets of stories as you go along. Now, I want to say one super important thing about go-to-market, and that is go-to-market is the second most important thing you do. Second most important thing. I'm looking at my little monitor down below to see how it looks. The second most important thing you do in product management. The first most important thing, let me say what the third most important thing is first. The third most important thing is your solution. I mean, sad to say, the thing we put the most effort into is the third most important thing. The most important thing is making sure you have a market problem that's worth solving. If you don't have a market problem worth solving, then all the go-to-market and all the beautiful solution that you built, nobody's going to buy it because they don't care, because you're not solving a problem for them. So Most important thing is finding a market problem that people need a solution for and they're willing to pay for that. Second most important thing is being able to take that solution to market effectively, and you don't even need a product to do it. I mean, eventually you need a product. Third most important thing, still necessary for a successful product, is to have a product that solves the problem effectively, right? You can't just say that you're going to have a product and have a successful business. You know, you can't just do really good go-to-market. You do still have to build a solution, but the solution is, in some sense, the third most important thing. Because if you have a good product, and even if you've got a good solution, I mean, even if you found a good problem and you've created a good solution to that problem, if you can't go to market effectively, then nobody's going to buy it, and your company's going to go out of business, and you weren't successful. So the order is pretty important in terms of the ordering of importance, and all three are very necessary for success. Okay, so that is a lot of good stuff about go-to-market. I really sort of touched on a lot of stuff there, and you might think, well, okay, what can I do today to make this happen? Well, first of all, I would recommend going back to, it's a few slides ago when I gave the list of big questions, right? The big questions are your litmus test for how well you have go-to-market under control, right? Do you know how to reach the people? Meaning, can you define the segment effectively who have the problem? When you have found those people and gotten them into your funnel, can you qualify them, and can you do effective discovery? Do you have the right questions for doing that? And can we articulate why our product is better in all these different dimensions, from objection handling, from features, from differentiation, from stories, all of those things? And if we can do those things, then we're much more likely to be successful than we would be otherwise. So that is the go-to-market, the sort of quick thing on go-to-market and best practices. If you do these things, now there's a lot of other sites and things on the internet that give you all kinds of advice about go-to-market. And what I'm trying to provide here is essentially what I call the minimum effective dose. What do you have to do to be successful? You have to do the things that I've got here on this slide, right? We have to know who to reach. We have to know how to qualify them, and we have to know how to close them, essentially. We have to know how to convince them that our solution is a better choice for them than their alternatives. And so if you can do those things, everything else is fine-tuning after that. I mean, and there's lots of opportunities for fine-tuning. If you don't do these things, it doesn't matter how much growth hacking you do, it's not going to be significant. Once you have these things under control, then you can start thinking about growth hacking, where you get percentage points of improvements. So that's the thing to think about. Now, there are other things about what about the templates? I didn't give you any templates. I tend to not be a template person. I'm an idea person. But if you need some templates, let me know. Leave a comment below or whatever. You can tweet me, and I've got all the contact information down flowing across underneath my screen there. You can get back to me with all that stuff. But at any rate, that's the most important stuff to do in go-to-market. If you can't do that stuff, you're not going to be successful. If you do it, the rest of it is gravy at that point. So if you want to hear more about me and see more of my stuff, well, obviously, I've got a whole bunch of YouTube videos here on the YouTube channel. I have a book that covers a lot of stuff about go-to-market. It's the Secret Product Manager Handbook. It's available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. As I say, it's also you can access some more information about it on my website, secretpmhandbook.com, and there's a link to buy it there. Let me know if you need multiple copies. Maybe you want to give copies to your whole team. I will soon have an order form for that, but I don't yet have the order form, but I can still do it. The book, of course, has lots on go-to-market as well as on finding market problems and building solutions, all those different things. I am on Twitter at this Nilsey. Let me blow this slide up so you can see it more easily. Go over here. Okay, so I'm on Twitter at Nilsey. I have the blog. I mentioned that. I have a podcast. It's occasional. Sometimes what shows up on the podcast is the audio from my videos. That's at alltheresponsibility.com. Obviously, I have the YouTube channel. Now, if you enjoyed this video or want to hear more or have questions or whatever, want to share it with your friends, please subscribe to the channel and like the video and share it with your friends, and I will put additional information in the post as well, like a link to the value inequality. I think I'll be able to put a link to the value inequality video at the end of this video once it's all recorded and stuff and saved. I really appreciate it when I get comments, and of course likes are great. They make me feel great, but comments are great, and I love to answer the questions if you give me questions or ask me questions. And so I think that's about it for tonight. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and hopefully I will see you again next week. I will not be here the first 2-3 weeks of April. April 1st, it's possible I'll do April 1st, but I might not, because I'm leaving on a big long trip the next day, and I might just not be in this head state to do that. And then I'll be gone the following 2 weeks after that, and I should be back on whatever the 22nd, I guess, is the third Monday of April, fourth Monday of April, whatever that, I don't know, third or fourth. I can't do that kind of arithmetic in my head. So that's what it is. Anyway, check it out. I will continue to do these after I get back, and it's a lot of fun for me to do them, and it's a lot of fun for me to get the feedback on them as well. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and that is it for me. Have a great week. Bye-bye.